So I was in a mastermind last week, and it was about a 7, 8 hour mastermind, and it was agents that were invited. Were doing about 20 million plus in volume, 20 million plus in volume, and it was really interesting to get 45 people in a room and just go over, what's going on in the real estate industry, how people are building their businesses, how they're leveraging their companies, how they're getting their time back and hiring people. I love being in those rooms, but one thing that when I was there was a few speakers. So not only do we answer each other's questions and challenges and talk about growth, but bring in a few speakers. And there was a guy there by the name of Brian Gubernick, which I've heard before. And if you've never followed Brian, I definitely would suggest that you do. He's just a teacher and somebody who's built a very big business. And I always look when somebody's building their company and see like, do I like how they're spending their personal time or what they talk about. I look at somebody who's built a big business and think, who does that person look like as a person? And as I don't know Brian personally, but just from what I see, it's somebody that I would say looks like he's really tried to go down the road of not just growing a massive business, but also having a great quality of life. And those are the people that I'm trying to follow more and more as I get more established in my real estate career and as I just get older. But Brian talked about a topic. It was the 8 most common actions of the top teams in the nation. So he went on this hunt, and this was something that didn't matter really what brokerage we were with. Didn't matter a lot of things, but the things that did matter were what was important. So he said that it was the 8 most common actions of the top teams in the nations, and he wanted to find people who he felt were successful and ask them what those common traits of where they find their success and how he defined success. I think is very powerful because he didn't want to find one-hit wonders, and I think that that's a good thing to look for, because a lot of people in this industry, they might have one really good year or they might seize a market but not the next. This was going over people who have succeeded for at least 7 to 8 years, meaning they've been highly profitable for 7 to 8 years and they're still succeeding. So I want to go over these 8 actions that we learned in this mastermind, because I think it's just super powerful for us to take in and try to figure out how we can do this in our businesses. So I want to start here with, a lot of people that listen to this podcast, have teams. And so these are things that we can implement and do better. And I'm going to insert some of the things that, we do in our company at the Bowers team. And I'm also going to tell you things that I think that we need to improve on. But a lot of listeners, I feel, are just solo agents, right? And there's nothing wrong with being a solo agent. It can be highly profitable and where you can make some of the most money in real estate. But the first thing that I think that you'll think of as you listen to these 8 actions is, well, I don't have a team, so I wouldn't be able to do this. And that's what I would argue. I think that, some would say, oh, well, if you have a team, it's easier to do. And I would say, well, those people did these actions on their own, and that's why they have a team. So I really think that. So as you're listening to this, if you're a solo agent, start doing this stuff on your own. Build like cadences that you have with yourself. And then as you grow, because these actions will help you grow. And as you grow, you'll have to get people around you to help you. And then that's where it's really like leading with these actions solo. And then it builds into something where you're doing these same exact meetings, but with other people. So let's talk about number 1. And it was predictable environment, standard expectations for roles, cadence of the day, team leader, meetings and events, resources and training. So those were in my notes. It was standards and expectations. They have a cadence to the day. They have a team calendar. Now let's think that through. So like I said, if you're a solo agent, those are things that, you've got to figure out how to put these in your calendar. Like, do you have a cadence of your day, or are you just running around always, putting out fires and jumping into that meeting and jumping into this meeting? I'm not saying that things can be perfect, but overall, do you have a structure to the day? And I wanted to talk about this because, in our office, we do have cadences. So for example, In the mornings at 9:30, we get on a Zoom where we talk to a few of my key people, my transaction coordinator who runs my office as well, and my property management of my properties. I meet with my wife's on there. Kylie's my personal assistant. She's on there. And so this is a meeting that we do at 9:30, and we have a cadence to that meeting that's very structured. And it's important because we follow a cadence, because we found that if we don't, we're all just talking about different things. And we really want to make sure these are 20 to 25-minute meetings that get to the point of what we're trying to accomplish in that day. So like our meetings, we talk about how many new contacts did we add to the database. And then we talk about our active properties and what we need to do. And then my personal properties that I own, are there any that we need to put on the market for rent? And then we go into our pending transactions and what we need to do. And then we end it with everyone's projects and what their tasks are that they need to do next on their projects. But it was having standards and expectations and a cadence to the day. And so that's something where if you're a solo agent right now, like start putting some cadences in your day, have a structure, and then also have times where, once a week you sit down and you do like finances, and then once a week it's having a proactive business instead of always reactive of just running around. So number 2 of the most common actions of the top teams in the nation. So number 2 is keep score. So they have some type of scoreboard. So whether that was, a spreadsheet, whether they're filling out a chart, whether they're coloring a chart on the wall, whether they're using systems like Sisu or other high-tech systems to keep a scoreboard of what the agents are doing. The point is they always know what the score is. So they know topic or they're keeping track of lead generations and appointment sets and closings and how much commissions and which agents are closing which deals. They know the score. And why I thought that was a great one was because I always say that, if you're playing a game, let's say you're Tom Brady and you're playing a football game, you can't just be, you can't just look up and wonder, oh, well, what quarter is it? And where is that? Do I got to ask my coach? And how many timeouts do I have? And what down are we on? And how many yards do we have to go? This is stuff that it's on a scoreboard. Like he looks up and he can see that it's the fourth quarter. He's got 2 minutes. It's second down. He's got 3 yards to go. He knows exactly by looking at a few key metrics in about 2 seconds, the energy that he needs to have on this play and really what he needs to do. So we need to have scoreboards and scorecards in our office so we know, do we need to hit the gas, or could we actually, are we all caught up with our goals and we could actually take a break, enjoy some vacations and things like that. But keeping score is super important. In our office, we do it on spreadsheets, Google Sheets. We can all see it. In our team meetings, we talk about it. We know what the score is at all times. And we've used other systems that were more high tech like Sisu, and those didn't work for us. It was a little bit too high tech. I've found that you can run a really big company on just a spreadsheet. So that's how we do it. The third action, team leaders actively plan and manage their time. They leverage a calendar to block time, and they mostly honor that. I think that's really important. They leverage a calendar to block time, and they mostly honor it. What I felt was the most important thing about that one action was they mostly honor it. You can hear people when they, when you go to conventions and you hear people talk about their daily cadence or what their structure is, they always want to get very like, at 6:30 I do this, and at 9 I do this, and I lead generate for 3 hours a day, and I go to lunch at 12. And don't get me wrong, there might be people that truly do that like every single day, and that's cool and good for them. I have found that that's not me. I've always looked for consistency, not perfection. So I like that when Brian was interviewing these 40 people, he found these common traits. And one of the common traits was they have a set calendar or time blocks, and they mostly honor it. And I kind of chuckled when he said that because, it made me feel better about myself and my company, because you can get into these spots where you have some things you want to do and you don't always get them done. And I think the point is if you looked up and said, hey, 330 days out of the year I did this, I don't think anyone's really looking at those other days. It's more, like I said, about consistency and not perfection. And so number 4 was the team leaders leverage personal work time. Most successful team owners have a weekly, sometimes daily chunk of block time to work on their personal projects related to the team. And so where I found that I do that in my business is, I was actually, before I recorded this podcast, I had to work on a project that I needed to get done for my team. And so there are times throughout the week where I'll block off times and say like, hey, this isn't really, it's not following up with leads and it's not now business, but it's things that my team needs. And I've got to focus on, sometimes building a system, sometimes, figuring out how I can have coaching and training better. But it was something where they've actually blocked out that time, chunks of time where they said that they were going to work on, projects for the team. So once again, if you're a solo agent, that would be a good thing to now notice, like the top teams or the top team leaders, how they've got to where they're at is by doing that. So why wouldn't you go in your calendar now and block off some time to build some systems in your business? Have you ever, met a realtor, or even maybe you're one right now that, you always feel like you're, behind. It's, oh, I put a pending transaction together and I don't have a system together, or I feel like I'm always recreating the wheel. That's where you sit down every once in a while and like, instead of recreating the wheel, why don't you just like sit down, build the wheel, spend 1-2 hours and say, hey, if this happens in my business, this is what I do. Here's a checklist and this is what I'll do every single time. And the next time that you get that, piece of business, you have a checklist and now you're a little bit more organized and it just compounds over the years. So number 5 was team leaders and key people understand the team financials. They have P&Ls and they strategize with those P&Ls, and they have other eyes that look at it besides themselves. This one was powerful to me because what was talked about is, there's a lot of people who have a P&L, and a P&L is a profit and loss. It's for your business. When you look at a P&L, it's revenue that's come in, your commissions, it's revenue that's come in, it's cost of sell, it's the agents that you're paying, and then what you've made after the revenues come in and your cost of sell paying your agents, you have a number. Then minus all expenses and salaries, and then you have at the bottom what's called a profit. Now, if you're a solo agent, you're still doing all this stuff. You still have revenue that comes in. You still have a cost of sell. It's probably zero if you're a solo agent. So you have revenue that comes in. Cost of sell is probably zero. You have some expenses. You probably pay yourself a salary. And at the end, you have what's a profit. And that profit is how you would build your company. So, but a lot of people, they use a P&L or a profit and loss as just something their CPA does for them. And it's just for tax purposes. There's no strategizing to it. It's just almost like, hey, they just spend whatever they're going to spend, make whatever they make. And then at the end of the year, their accountant does, a P&L, and it's just, kind of put in the file as more of a IRS or something that they're going to use for their taxes. Now, what you would want to do is, and I like that this topic was brought up because it was saying that, they understand their team financials and they review them regularly. And they also have another set of eyes. So what a P&L is really for is it's to help you strategize month to month. So when you, like in our company, I get a P&L about 30 days behind, but I get a P&L for my bookkeeper once a month for the previous month. And I just go through it and I look at the revenue that came in, the cost of sell, how much expenses we have going out, what we profited. And so, but, some are just, hey, I'm just going to look at my bank account and see what I have in my bank. And that's something you want to get away from, is just logging into your bank account and seeing how much money you have. That doesn't really tell you whether or not your company's doing well or not. I mean, you could, let's say you had a really good year and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in your bank account. And so you're just looking at that. And let's say it's going, down a little bit, but you still have a lot of money in there. It doesn't really give you the overall pulse of your company, where when you're looking at a P&L, you truly know monthly what you're profiting and you can make decisions. But another thing that I liked that they talked about was not only that they use the profit and loss for strategy, but they do it regularly. And so my P&L, I look at that once a month. So on the first of the month, I review that. And then I decide how did the month before go? And then I reassess what we might need to be doing differently as the leader. And then I advise everyone on what we need to do next, as far as, how to get more revenue through the door, or what expenses we possibly could cut, or what lead gen activities we actually need to implement and add, which will be a higher expense. But the other set of eyes was probably the one that was most important to me as I heard that, because I've used a P&L for, strategy, and I have for many years. But the other set of eyes was something that I just started doing recently and has been powerful. So I got a coach about, let's say, 13, 14 months ago. I realized that I was looking at my P&L on a monthly basis, but not having another set of eyes. And it was about 13, 14 months ago where my coach looked at it and realized that I think like the cost of sell for buyer's agents was like $700,000, something like that was being paid out. And so he looked at that and said, hey, Chris, could we keep more of that money in-house if we structured your company differently? And that's where the showing partner model formed in my company, was strategizing, looking at the P&L and saying, how could we do this differently? So number 6 was team leaders teach nonstop. And it's they're always teaching. He actually said they have a microphone at all times. And I think that could be, something to note is, I do look at a lot of leaders in the real estate industry, and a lot of them do have a microphone, whether they do have like a podcast or whether they're teaching classes. They're always teaching to their team, to their agents. They're always givers. And this doesn't have to be a big production. I'm not talking about, they didn't say they did podcasts. They didn't say they speak on stage of 5,000 people. This is just teachers at heart, meaning they're just always giving back to people, whether it's their team members, whether it's their real estate community. They're always looking for ways to, teach people, and they're always looking to recruit. I thought that was really, really interesting, is that they're always looking to recruit. So out of the 40 teams that he interviewed and found like the common threads of what the top 8 actions were for their growth, they were always in recruiting mode. And, some might look at that differently, but that makes sense to me, because they either had to recruit agents to their team to keep up with their goals. Like, think right now, if you're on a team, let's say you're listening to this podcast and you're on a team, where an agent owns the team and there's 40 people on that team. Well, how do you think that person who owns the team is getting the team members to, be on the team and handle all his leads so that you can be on like a 50-50 split or whatever it may be? He's always got to be, or she's always got to be in recruiting mode. So as I was listening to this, it made sense that they're always teachers and they're always recruiting. That feels a little bit like myself. Like, I'm always looking for agents to help, and I was, bringing them on my team and saying, hey, let's get you leads. Let's teach you how to do real estate so you can make money. And that's been a fun path that I've really enjoyed over the last year or so, that I'm having a lot more fun as I get older, teaching agents on how to either go from where they're at to scaling a company, or that newer agent on how to just start getting more business. 7, team leaders are executive athletes. And then he said they're the Tom Brady's of their industry. They're focused on health and energy. They're committed to personal development and growth. I love this because I have actually really noticed that from afar. And so I like that, Brian, when he was doing his research, that he found out that these people, they're always trying to be the best in their industry, whether they're going to masterminds, conventions, meeting up with one-on-ones with people who are, doing big things in the industry. But another one that I loved is that they focus on health and energy. That's been something that's been heavy on my mind over the last probably 3 and 4 months. If anybody follows me on social, they've probably noticed that. But I have just been finding out that the more and more you get your energy right, like your energy allocation, the more you spend on yourself early in the morning, just the better the day goes overall. And they're committed to personal development and growth. That's podcasts they're listening to, people they're, listening to, books they're reading. I thought that was really, really interesting because, I'm sure you'll meet people that are like, I don't have really time to listen to a podcast. I'm busy, or I don't really want to read books. I like reading, other types of books. I don't want to read business books or self-development books. And there's no wrong or right to any of these statements. I think what was cool was Brian just went out on a journey to find out, what are the common threads to successful real estate teams and agents. And he noted there was a lot more than 8, but he wanted to get the 8 that were consistent, or that were pretty consistent across the board with every agent. And then also they were very purposeful with their circle. That was also in that team leaders or executive athletes. They're committed to their personal development and growth. And then it was they're purposeful with their circle. That hit me hard because I think we are on a mission to really, decide who's in our circle. And when I say circle, I just don't mean people, like actual physical people out there and friends. I mean, who's in our circle, as in, because we're in a new world. If we said 20 years ago, our circle, it would just been like our friend group and maybe the radio and TV. Now I'm talking our circle as in social media, who we're following on Instagram and Facebook, who we're hanging out with actually personally, who we're like, what on TV are we consuming? What on the radio are we consuming? And that's where I feel like our circles now are very virtual, where it's like, what are we listening to? What are we watching? What are we scrolling? Are our circles building us up? And I thought that was, important to note that was one of the things that was a common thread between these people. Number 8 was the team has a value proposition and team leaders always have recruiting on their mind. So that was, that was recruiting on your mind was actually number 8. So, but teams have a value proposition and team leaders always have recruiting on their mind. Team leaders know what the value they know what their value is they bring to their agents. And as we were sitting through this section, I chuckled again because he said most of the people that he interviewed, they all had a conviction with their value proposition. But there was something interesting about it is a lot of their value propositions were the same, but they felt as if something was very different about their value proposition. But he listening to it had felt like a lot of them were the same. And I hope I interpreted that correctly when I was listening to it, or maybe that's just what I was thinking, but I'm just going over, how I felt when I was listening to this at the mastermind. But team leaders have a value proposition and always recruiting on their mind. And so they not only had one, a lot of them were the same, but they felt that there's maybe different. But the point was, he was saying, is they are so intense with that value proposition that they're so intense on it that that's their value proposition. They recruit and they tell people that's their value proposition. They're intense about it and they really help people grow and build their company. So, it might be, and this is my interpretation, it might just be something where, it's the intensity of having someone around you that's actually trying to build you up, no matter what their value proposition is, that they're pouring into you and that they're leading you and that they're trying to get you to the next level. And so that was, a really fun mastermind. This was one of the 3 speakers. I might talk about some of the other speakers on some other podcasts, but this was one that I just thought was, very important for my audience to hear. And I just want to run through them one more time. So it was the 8 most common actions of the top teams in the nations. It was 1, predictable environment. 2, they keep score. 3, team leaders actively plan and manage their time. 4, team leaders leverage personal work time. 5, team leaders and key people understand the team's financials. 6, team leaders teach nonstop. 7, team leaders are executive athletes. And 8, teams have value propositions and team leaders are always recruiting. They always have recruiting on their mind. So those are the 8. I hope that you learned something from this. I do want to leave again with this, that there's some agents that have many people on their team and they're already doing some of this stuff. And, they can level up by hearing this, or you just got, you felt powerful because you're like, whoa, I'm doing a lot of that stuff, and lean into that. That means you're going the right direction. And there's a lot of agents that listen to this podcast that are solo agents. And I just want you to start doing this stuff with yourself. So when you heard cadences or office meetings, start just hosting those on your own, where those are times that you have that you put office meeting and it's just you, and you'll grow into that, where if you're doing your own office meeting, one day it's going to be, hey, I've got an office meeting and an assistant, and then it just builds from there. And so thank you everybody for listening today. I hope this helped you out with some things that you're going through right now in your business, and wish you guys all the success.